While the President of the United States was telling the world that Canada only exists because of American generosity, the Allies were making phone calls. Not to Washington, to each other. Sweden's largest pension fund liquidated 8 billion in American assets, not gradually, not over quarters. They pulled the money out. Denmark's central bank sold $100 million in US Treasury bonds. America's Treasury Secretary responded by calling Denmark, a NATO ally whose soldiers died alongside Americans in Afghanistan, quote, irrelevant. Denmark kept selling. Canada's Prime Minister flew to Beijing and signed an economic cooperation roadmap with China, America's chief rival, while Washington slept. The European Commission flew to New Delhi and finalized what Brussels is calling the mother of all trade deals. 2 billion people, 96% of tariffs eliminated. Not a single American company at the table. And France activated the EU's anti-coercion instrument, the legal mechanism that authorizes coordinated economic retaliation against any country weaponizing trade against Europe. All of this within 10 days. And all of it traces back to one sentence. January 21st, President Trump on camera, quote, Canada lives because of the United States. They should be grateful. 6 days later, Canada's Prime Minister stood in Parliament and said in French, so Americans wouldn't hear it, quote, there is almost nothing normal in the United States right now, and that is the truth. Then he revealed something that should alarm every American watching this. 12 new trade deals, 4 continents, 6 months. Canada isn't protesting. Canada is replacing you. And they're not alone. Let me show you what triggered the largest financial exit from the United States in modern history and what it's going to cost you. To understand why 5 countries moved against American financial interests simultaneously, you need to hear what happened. 3 days before the money started moving, President Trump, defending his threats to reduce NATO funding, said America's allies in Afghanistan, the British, the Canadians, the Germans, quote, stayed a little back, a little off the front lines. He said Americans did the real fighting while allies watched. 457 British soldiers died in that war in Helmand Province in Kandahar, in the same kill zones where American Marines were bleeding. 158 Canadians dead. 59 Germans dead. Denmark per capita suffered heavier combat losses than nearly any coalition member. These countries honoured Article 5, the promise that an attack on one is an attack on all, with blood, not money, not statements. Blood. And the President of the United States just told their families it didn't count. Britain's Prime Minister called the remarks, quote, frankly appalling and insulting. Germany's Defence Minister went on national television and demanded a public apology. But the real damage wasn't emotional. It was strategic. European leaders made a calculation. If this president doesn't honour their sacrifice from the past, he will not protect their borders in the future. NATO didn't collapse that day. Something worse happened. It stopped being believable, and the money followed the logic. Let me show you where it went. January 27th, while Washington slept, the European Commission and India signed the largest bilateral trade agreement in modern history. Here's what American companies just lost. German cars faced a 110% tariff entering India last week. Under this deal, 10%. Volkswagen, Mercedes, BMW companies. Trump's tariffs are crushing in America just gained access to the fastest growing car market on earth. Wine Indian tariff was 150% eliminated. Machinery, 44% eliminated chemicals, pharmaceuticals gone. In return, India gets 99% tariff-free access to the entire European market. Textiles, leather, jewelry, flowing directly into Paris, Berlin, and Rome without a single cent of tax. Now here's the timing that should make your stomach turn. This deal was signed the same week Trump imposed new tariffs of 25 to 40% on Indian goods. American companies selling in India now pay 25%. European competitors pay zero. European Commission President van der Leyen said it in New Delhi, quote, "We have sent a signal to the world that rules-based cooperation still delivers great outcomes." That signal was addressed to one man at one address. The message was not subtle. You are no longer essential. Now let me tell you what this means for your grocery bill. A French farmer can sell wheat to 1.45 billion Indian consumers completely tax-free. An American farmer selling identical wheat faces a 25% tariff wall. Who does the buyer choose? This is called trade diversion, and it's the silent killer of economic superpowers. You don't collapse in a dramatic moment. You lose one contract at a time. One buyer switches suppliers. One shelf stocks German goods instead of American slowly, quietly, permanently. And here's a detail no one is covering. This deal includes mutual recognition of professional credentials. An Indian engineer certified under this agreement can work in Germany tomorrow. A European doctor can practice in India next month. The talent pipeline that built Silicon Valley is being redirected. Europe just made it easier for India's brightest minds to choose Munich over Mountain View. We're not just losing trade, we're losing the people who build the future. But the buried headline is worse. The EU-India agreement includes an entire chapter on defense and security cooperation, joint maritime operations, in the Indo-Pacific, cybersecurity coordination, intelligence sharing frameworks. These are conversations Europe used to have with Washington. Now they're having them with New Delhi. Let me say that again. Washington was not consulted about a defense agreement between its closest allies and the world's largest democracy. They found out from a press release. That isn't a trade deal. That is a strategic realignment of the Western order. Now let me show you where this leaves America. For 80 years, every major trade route ran through American influence. Every alliance was anchored by American commitment. Every deal that mattered required an American signature. That architecture is breaking. The insult to Allied soldiers shattered trust. The tariffs built walls. And this week, Europe and India built a highway around those walls. Mark Carney stood at Davos 10 days after visiting Beijing and told the world, quote, "Middle powers must act together, because if you are not at the table, you are on the menu." He Wa-til received a standing ovation from the leaders of countries Trump is threatening with tariffs. Then he sat across from America's Treasury Secretary, the man who called Denmark irrelevant, and rolled his eyes on camera at Davos. He told reporters, quote, "I meant what I said." Then he revealed the number. 12 new deals, 4 continents, 6 months. Canada is not waiting for permission. Canada is building a new economic order without us. When President Trump responded with, quote, "Canada lives because of us," that wasn't a rebuttal. That was proof. Proof that the man in the Oval Office still believes allies have no choice but to accept whatever terms America dictates. But they have a choice now. And this week, every major ally made it. Sweden pulled $8 billion. Denmark sold its bonds. India opened its markets to Europe and closed them to America. Canada's Prime Minister signed a trade deal with China while the president was still bragging. The question that will define the next decade isn't whether America can rebuild these relationships. It's whether anyone will want us back after we've proven we can't be trusted. We'll be tracking the US response. Likely more tariffs expected within days. Subscribe so you don't miss what comes.